Alright guys, today I'm going to be changing the brakes and rotors on my 1997 Ford Ranger. First you're going to remove the slide pin bolts, which are 13 millimeters. And after you remove those, you're going to want to get a really big breaker bar with a 15 millimeter socket. That way we can unbolt the caliper bolts, which were really tight on there for me. After you're done with that, you're going to unbolt it the rest of the way. I just set it on top of the axle so that way it's not hanging by the brake line. As long as it's not hanging by the brake line, you can put it wherever you need. Next, we're going to pull the cap that goes over the spindle nut. Easiest way to do that is hammer a screwdriver in there and then just pry it off. Next, you're going to pull the cotter pin off. That's going to be what holds the castle nut on there. After that's removed, then you can just loosen the spindle nut. After that spindle nut's off, you can just pull the brake rotor off. Next, we're going to clean off the spindle. Just hit it with some brake clean and wipe it down a little bit, and then you should be all good. Also, while I'm in there, I'm going to replace the wheel bearings. This is just kind of a quick run through on how to pack bearings. Basically, you're just scooping grease into the bearings, and you're just making sure they're just saturated in grease. That way you don't have bearing failure. Now we're going to install the new bearings. So on the back side there's going to be a bearing, and then there's going to be a seal over it. And to install that seal, kind of set it over there and then give it a couple taps with a hammer. Now on the front it's just going to be the bearing by itself with a washer and then the spindle nut over it. So go ahead and throw the brake rotor on, and then we'll put that washer and then the spindle nut over that. And then with the spindle nut, you're basically just going to tighten it down and then back it off up until the cotter pin lines up with the grooves on the castle nut itself. And always use a brand new cotter pin. I'm just reusing mine because I ran out of them. And then you're just going to clean off the rotor real quick before we continue. And then your brake pads should have come with new hardware. Then you're going to replace all the hardware with the new stuff. That way you don't have any issues. Next, you're going to remove the slide pins and you're going to make sure you grease them. I pulled mine out and they were completely dry, and that's not good because you like to be able to stop. And then you're going to reinstall your slide pins and then continue on. And then there's one more piece to replace. After you replace that, you can start reassembling the caliper. So just start by installing the slide pin bolts, and then we can compress the brake caliper. If you don't have a caliper compressor like me, you can just use the old brake pad and a C-clamp. That works just as well, and compresses the caliper. Now you're going to install the new brake pads. Make sure they're in the right direction and get them popped in place. And then make sure to line up the caliper bolts, get them threaded in, and then get them tightened down pretty tight. You don't want your caliper falling off. Next, we're going to wipe down the brake one last time, and then reinstall that cap. Just give it a couple taps with a hammer and then you're all good. Next, you're going to bolt the wheel back on. Just get them tightened down, and then you're going to torque the lug nuts. I torqued them to 100 foot-pounds. I believe that's what the spec is. Then you're going to put the cap back on, and you are all good.